So today we're going to make an elephant out of ceramic clay. That means clay that is going to be fired in a kiln to make it hard. What we'll be doing is using just about this amount of clay. This is probably about 3 by 3 inches and 1.5 inches thick. And we're going to break it into some parts to make our elephant. The things that you're going to need to get started is a surface to lay your clay out on, preferably some kind of canvas. It seems to work well for absorbing the clay and keeping the mess down, and a little container of some water, a couple of wet paper towels to keep the clay damp, a Ziploc to put your elephant into if you don't finish. And then this is our secret tool. It's just a 1/4 inch dowel that is put into a pencil sharpener to have a cone sort of point on it. And that will be able to accomplish the whole elephant just using this one tool. One thing to keep in mind with ceramic clay is that it will shrink on the outside where it gets the air and where it gets hot first. And so any place that you have that is more than 1 inch thick, there needs to be air circulating into it. And so this tool is going to provide the opportunity to get some areas into the clay open enough that the warm air can circulate in there, and then it doesn't shrink and explode. So let's go ahead and get started. We have our initial brick of clay. We're going to break it in half, one direction, and then we're going to break 1/4 of it off of each of those two pieces. We're using one of the larger chunks just for the body, one of the larger chunks that's going to be just for the legs, one of the smaller chunks that will be the head, and the other small chunk will be for the ears and the tail. So right now we're going to just work with the body. So we're going to take our 2 small chunks and our other large chunk, set it aside, and put a damp paper towel over it so that it stays moist. Okay. Now, each of these pieces you want to kind of get the air out of it, although it came off of a brick and so it doesn't have a lot of air and pockets in it. We're just going to mold it into kind of a rounded form. We'll take that and we're going to flatten one edge of it. Okay, so I'm going to take one edge and I'm just going to tap it until I have kind of a flattened bottom on there. And I want it flattened enough that I can fit 4 legs. So I'm going to make a mark with my tool here, 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 and here. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to create a funnel kind of shape similar to the bottom, like a pencil shape. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go down to where the curve ends and then kind of open up a cone-shaped hole at each of those locations. Okay, now I'm going to wet this so that it becomes a little bit glue-like. I'm going to stick my finger in this water and I'm going to rub it around the outsides of these holes. And I'm not necessarily trying to get any liquid inside those holes. I just want them to be kind of damp, and then as soon as the glossiness of the water disappears, then that's ready to receive the legs. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and take this, put it underneath a wet paper towel, grab my chunk for my legs, and I'm going to need 4 of them, so I'm going to break that in half once. It kind of helps to score it so that I'm kind of getting even chunks. Break it apart, and then break this one in half too. So I'll have 4. Okay, put a couple of them away, and then we're going to turn these into cylinders. Okay, kind of chunky cylinders. We want them to be a little bit fatter towards the foot, a little narrower up towards the top. Okay, I'm liking this size a little bit better than the second size. I'm going to kind of flatten that down, get it a little fatter. Okay, we don't want him to be too tall. I think I'm going to take a little piece off of that I don't need. Okay, now we're going to flatten the bottom on these to begin with, get them kind of chunky, and then we're going to make our funnel tip shape that's going to go into the holes that we created on the bottom. So we're just going to pinch this so that it sort of resembles the shape on the bottom of our tool. And then we're going to dampen that. All right, so there's our 4 legs started. Come back to the body. We're going to stick one in just like they were 2 tools that meant to go together. Take it in and then twist it. It's almost like you're screwing the leg into the body. Okay, now give it a little tap, and you want that to where it really feels like you couldn't just pull them out, that they wouldn't want to drop out. That also gives their feet, starting to have their feet have a little bit of resemblance of an elephant's foot. Now you're going to use this tool again. So I'm just going along at each leg and just rolling this until that seam kind of disappears. Any places that I've gotten some indentations that I don't want to have, I'm going to kind of roll those out as well, but keeping in mind that an elephant has a lot of wrinkles anyway, so it's not something to really worry about. Now, one thing that we can do right now that would be a good idea so that we don't forget is to create that air hole, the air pocket that's going to go into the large piece of the body. That's where we don't want to have any, have it explode. So we're going to go right in between the legs. We're going to measure how far that is, and we know we want to go into the body at least to about there. So I'm going to put my fingers at that point, and then I'm going to insert that stick, and I want to kind of open up an area underneath that's going to allow air to keep that guy from exploding in the kiln. Okay, now we've got him partway done. I think we're going to use this guy for our front. So I'm going to kind of form these legs just a hair. And he's kind of taking a step out. Now, we're going to create our hole for the head to come in. So that's going to be, probably about here. Create it. Dampen it around the outer edge. And then we want our headpiece. Now, he's going to have a trunk, right? So let's just go ahead and start to encourage the trunk shape. Now, we're going to want it to attach. And this is kind of where you can decide whether or not he's looking up or he's looking down or he's looking straight at you. And that's going to be where you're going to decide to put your funnel shape. And I'm going to put it right about here. I'm just going to pinch a piece in the back, just like we did with the legs. And then this is going to go in. Start from the side and just twist it. Start to join it at the neck by rolling this rolling pin kind of action. Now, depending on what you want this nose to do, you may want to dampen it just a bit so it doesn't start to crack, and stretch it. And I'm using the end to flatten out the tip, give it a little hole in there. And I think our next step probably is going to be putting those ears on. And this one becomes a more of a slot kind of thing. So we're going to come in here and we're going to slide it back and forth. Okay, find our ears. And this is probably more clay than we need for ears. Just pinch off a portion of and sometimes this can also be used to kind of create a little bit of a ruffled edge. I'm not very symmetrical, so I'm going to bring this ear up, this ear down. And this needs to flatten out a bit to match our, that's going to be a little too much. Okay, time for your number 2. I don't quite want as much clay as I took. You don't want to get these too thin because they'll get fragile and want to break in the kiln. So keep them, I'd say at least about 1/8 of an inch thick. Okay. And this is kind of your opportunity to decide whether how you want to have the character of your elephant to look. Sometimes having the ears go down can make him look a little sadder. His ears are up, you might look younger, more inquisitive, depending on the attitude that you're trying to create. And that looks okay. What do you think? He's still standing up. Okay, so tail and eyes. It's about the only thing that's left, and I can do that probably with what I have left in these pieces off the ears. Now the tails on the elephant are not terribly long and they're not terribly thick, so that means they're going to be pretty fragile. So you're going to want to probably make it curl up and touch, either curl up and touch or curl down and touch the body so that it's not a projection that might fall off. So again, I'm going to kind of give him a little bit of a bottom. I think I can do that by tapping it a little bit here so it flattens out. I'm going to dampen this just a little bit so that it feels pliable for getting it to move the direction I want it to. That should hold that on there pretty securely. Shouldn't project out too far so that you don't end up getting it knocked off by another elephant in the kiln. All right, eyeballs. I'm going to make 2 little eyeballs. That's pretty cute even without an eyeball in there, but try and not get too much water inside the hole. If it gets in there, just use your tool to kind of pry it back out again. Now, all that's really left is the details that you want to put in, any kind of wrinkles or textures. Sometimes in the nose you have a few little marks that might show the folds of the skin as it's bending up. And you want it to dry kind of slowly. You don't want it to dry up too much on the outside, and you want those, you know, this guy's gonna dry first, this guy's gonna dry first, and the ears are gonna dry first. You want it to dry pretty evenly and slowly on those, so wrapping it up or just lightly covering it with your wet paper towel while it dries to keep those areas damp is gonna be your best bet. And that's it.